will think, if she can go after me, him, then she can go after me too. And so it's really up to the lay people. When you see something like that happening, to go after that person and say, no, you can't do this anymore. This is destroying the institution. You have to go elsewhere, or you have to change your behavior. It's very hard for the minister. So what I did in this case was something pretty dramatic. Actually, I told my board, I said, look, this is what this man is doing. And the people that he had driven away came back and they said, look, this is what he did to me. But the board was like, oh, really? So I said to them, I said to him, and my associate minister and I both went to him and said, please don't run for the moderator position again, because it's just not good for the church. There's too much conflict here with other leaders. And he said, well, I'm going to run again. So he did. And I was there at the board meeting, and they re-elected him. Yeah. So I was so angry. Angry. I was so angry with him, and I started crying. I was so angry. I've never done this with my church. I was so angry. I was crying, and I said, why did you do that? I told you what this man is doing. He's, destroying this institution. Why did you do this? And one person said, well, nobody else wanted the job. So what happened, my mistake was I didn't stay enough in touch with my board, because I was out raising money for the building, and I didn't stay in touch with them, or they wouldn't have gotten that far away from ministry. But nevertheless, so I said to them, okay, I told you I wasn't going to work with this. I cannot work with this man. And I said, and I am now leaving this room, and I'm not coming back to the board until he's gone. And I walked out. And my associate minister walked out with me. He said, I'm not coming back until he's gone. End of the story. It took them 2 years. 2 hours. It took them 2 years. They had 3 different consultants who were all in it. And he finally showed his true hand, and they asked him to leave. It took them 2 years. Wasted time when we could have been doing our thing, raising the money for the church. So, really, and it's up to the lay people. That was my experience. I'm sure all of you had experiences, greater or lesser than that, in which somebody who's either destructive or just not with it for one reason or another has taken too much a part of church leadership, and the laity will not step forward and do anything about it. Please don't let that happen in your congregation. And you can be kind, but you need to set limits. Yes.
So you could call that person bully.
He wasn't exactly, he was a very, what can I say? He was power hungry, yes. If you met him, you would think he was the nicest, sweetest person in the world. He was very manipulative, very smart, and very manipulative. So he wouldn't be an overt bully. Yes.
It's hard with things like that, because I had a situation with that with somebody who would say things to me that were very upsetting, that had his own agenda for the area, but then at the same time it was a presence to others that was
Seemed very nice.
Very nice, and it was kind of like, if I say anything, I'm going to look like the idiot. I'm going to look like I've got my own agenda.
That's right.
And, it really is sad. And then when everything did hit the fan for us, there was a lot of bad feelings.
Yeah.
And because it happened to more than one person. And so it is politics in a congregation can be so tricky, and it can be so, it's very difficult when someone walks in whatever position they're in leadership and have an agenda that's not to serve
the institution
itself. But how do you get to the point where you help people understand that that's the kind of service we need? I don't know how to say this just as clearly as
know, and because with ministry, it's very, very difficult to do that kind of thing. We have to, you know, set boundaries all the time. But when a minister says no in one way or another to a congregant, it's difficult on the congregant. And so it's very tricky because we're in a pastoral position with the congregant and we're in a position of institutional leadership. So sometimes those two are kind of in conflict.
I know the committees that we have, or I don't know what they call now, the teams. One of the things I did when I was in seminary is a bunch of us got together and did a service about service. And we talked about starting as a worship, you know, that every committee or team, if you put the center as a church, start with the meditation, start with something, then it's a different type of committee, it's a different type of service. It puts it all in a whole different feeling of what we're here for. And personal agendas can be put aside when you have that as your focus.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people are not going to put their personal agendas aside. I don't care how you start.
Right.
I would agree with that. I did say that in my talk, that I think that your spiritual context should be a part of everything that happens at the church so that people understand that we're serving a larger purpose in ourselves. Another question?
Yes, do you find behavioral covenants to be a helpful
Yes.
tool?
I think
Did you
that's,
try that?
yes, absolutely. Yes, we did that, and I know other churches that have done that. And I mean, it's a question of this is how we are together. And if somebody says something nasty to someone, it's like we don't talk like that in this church. We don't speak this way to anyone in this church. Period. Yeah, because you know.
That would give each congregant the power to call another.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
That's a good point. Yes.
I'm sorry. We don't have a legal covenant that's largely out to the congregation. Could you say a few words about this? I mean,
Well, you just, you know, agree.
Yeah,
on certain things that you will do or not do, and you will behave in certain ways, and you make a covenant and sign it and it comes out to everyone. Everybody agrees, you know, we are going to da 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 da, and we will refrain from da 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 da. And then it's kind of like, this is who we are. Yes. Oh, wait, is anybody, let me see if there's anybody else before, wait, you two have already spoken about it. Yeah, yeah?
Could you, maybe you have some thoughts about how you can empower the leaders with language and how when they get into that kind of sticky situation with that person? Sometimes I've heard, that was my congregation, say, I don't know what to say to the person, not that I'm not willing, but how can I, give me some words, Jackie, that I can use to say that person, you know, maybe I'm thinking of that book, Jerks, where he said, maybe this isn't the congregation for you, or something, you've got some thoughts like that?
Yeah, you're right. I think that sometimes leaders have to have some help in knowing how to do this. For example, we had people on our board, a couple of them who shouldn't have been on that board. And in our board, you can run again. And so I said to my board leaders, you need to talk to these folks and say, and you know, they didn't do this, even though I suggested that they do this. The thing to do is to say to them, you know, there's another position here that we think you would be really good for. You don't say, you know, we think you're doing a lousy job on the board, you're out of here. No, because everybody has something to offer. And so you find something, for example, that person has to offer, and you always speak in a positive way. So that's something that, yes, in board leadership, I think, and in congregational leadership, that kind of training, I think, would maybe occur so that you could understand how to get into a situation that's sticky like that and speak the truth in love and in a positive manner. Yeah? Yeah. But you need to be able to do it. My people are so, in Portland, we had the greatest people on the board. And we have a couple of people that just shouldn't have been on there. Everybody knew that. But my other board members would not say anything to them. And then, I don't know. So they took another term on the board, and well, I guess that's okay, but, I never could get them to just say, you know, there's a better place for you to be serving in the church. And as a minister, I did not feel it was my place to tell them that. So, there you go. Not the worst thing in the world to happen, I guess.
You mean they shouldn't have known because of the kind of personalities they had?
Because they were not institutionally minded, and they weren't, well, one of them just wasn't clear. I mean, one of these people who just drift, you know, and it's always just drift somewhere. And just shouldn't have been elected, but one of those things that happen. So, you know, when you have, especially when you have a large church, you need your very best people in an institution like that. You really can't afford to have, you know, people who are not institutionally minded or not strong. So, whatever, yeah.
Well, I'm also at a large congregation, and I know our board, just in the last couple of years, someone said, we need to run this church like a corporation. Now, I thought that was horrible, horrible.
Yes and no.
Yeah, can you speak more to that?
Well, in the sense that a corporation knows what it's doing, they have a mission, they're really clear, what's your money. Yeah, and it's organized, and it's hierarchical, and you know what the accountability is, right? So I think all those things are probably need to happen in a large church. Now, if it's run like a corporation, so that you know, different corporations are different. I mean, all of them are not, you know, monsters that eat people. I mean, some of them are really, you know, care about service and care about their employees. So, you know, the other values that we have in, you know, in our association should also, you know, flourish there. So it doesn't mean because you have a structure and because you have leadership that's clear that you cannot be, you know, loving, that you cannot take care of the environment, that you can't, you know, have diversity. So all these other values can hopefully coexist with a good organizational structure. Right? Yeah. Yes.
I'd love to hear more about accountability. How do you do it? I struggle with it. I think a church struggles with it more from, certainly not from the board, but more from volunteers.
In what
and people
ways?
like-
In what ways?
when people say they're going to do something and then they don't do it, and perhaps the board has goals, and that's what our various teams should be helping to fulfill the mission of the church, and the board has developed some goals, and people say, well, I'll take care of that team, but then they want to do something completely different. They don't want to do something that fulfills the mission. But you know, you sort of lose sight of it because there's so much work to do, and so you go, oh, that person's taking care of that, and you take your eyes off it a little while, and the next time you look at it, they're doing something completely different. They're completely enmeshed in it, and now you've got the power issue of how do you pry them loose from that or make them accountable for the job you asked them to do, not the job they felt like doing.
Yeah. And it's difficult in a voluntary organization. You can't
Yeah.
fire people.
Well, you can fire a volunteer, right?
Well, you can, but, you know, the problem is that, again, there is a casual situation, and, you know, they're not doing this for money, you know, they're doing it because of the love of the church. You know, and so you can't just, you know, crudely go in and say, you're out of here. Again, you have to work with people in, you know, in the full context and knowledge of their personalities and what they need, right? So, I think if you have an organizational structure that's clear and you know who is accountable to whom in the hierarchy, then whoever is, you know, supervising that entity, whatever it is, you know, needs to stay on top of it. And if it isn't happening, then there's a conversation about how can we make this happen. Maybe this job is not for you. Maybe you're too busy. maybe your mother is ill and you have to see about her. What can we do to help you? And of course, like any good supervisor, you would try to help and try to give some direction or aid. And if that doesn't work, well then this person is eased out and somebody else is invited in. But in our church, we had somebody that was on the peace committee, head of the peace committee. And this was an elderly woman that we all loved, but it was one of those things where there were like, I don't know, 5 people on the peace committee that were doing anything for, I don't know, 10 years. But nobody wanted to tell this lady, who was just the loveliest person in the world, that that group was dead. Okay, but churches get into that kind of thing, you know, and so how important was it? I don't know. You know, the rest of our social justice program was just going great, and this was stalled. And then later, you know, different parts of the social justice group I guess, kind of took over in other ways to kind of go around that, and we did get something going, and eventually she did retire from that position. So, you know, you can work around it, but it is difficult in churches. It just is, you know. But what really helps, I think, is the clarity in the organizational structure, so that you know who is responsible and that somebody is accountable to somebody else, and you stay on top of that. Yes?
We had 3 committee chairs who were doing work on the committee but not doing chairing. And all 3 of them accepted co-chairs. And in at least 2 of the cases, they were glad to have somebody take that
Yeah.
role.
Did that work? That worked for you then? Yeah. Because some people are not, they're not leader types in the sense that they do not know how to convene a meeting. Now, sometimes you can teach that, train that, you know, skill, and sometimes people just don't want to do that kind of thing. They don't like telling other people what to do, or even telling them let's sit in a circle. They don't want to do that. So that's okay. You again have to work with people as they are. But the committee that drags on, oh, you know, all this is reminding me of things. Yeah, it's like the person that started our foundation. Now that foundation should have been started. She started it. Thank God she started it. You know, but she was the chair of that thing for what? I mean, 8 years, and it was those meetings were just drove me nuts because they were so disorganized. And I kept saying to other really power people, you know, in the committee, I even got somebody in, a lawyer who was the head of a major law firm. I said, would you like to be on the committee? He's like, no, it would drive him crazy. And he resigned, you know, from the committee because he couldn't stand it. Because nobody would say, look, it's time for somebody else to chair this committee. That happens. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So, on a different thing.
Yeah.
Spiritual groundedness.
Yeah.
Your 2 volumes of poetry, of women's poetry, I always give as a gift to my outgoing board members who are women. Cries of the Spirit, and if they already have it, finding the Spirit with them. And it's getting harder to get the second. Who are your who do you turn to now? Who are your teachers, sources that
Of inspiration.
of inspiration?
Oh, that's very interesting. You know, I just poke around everywhere, really. Who am I reading now? Right now I'm reading Karen Armstrong. And she just, you know, she's, of course, you know her work, but I'm reading her memoir, Spiral Staircase, about her leaving a convent and becoming an academic. And that's very inspiring to me. Hafiz and Kabir. Those would be my two favorites. Hafiz and Kabir, the Persian poets, medieval poets. They're just so. What I like them so well is that they're so surprising with their imagery, and they just kind of wake me up. And the poems are, they just like strike me right in the heart, you know. And they're very, you know, make me think about my spiritual life in ways that I never did, except by those poets that I really like them. We're losing, we lost Adrienne Rich, of course, and then Mary Oliver, I understand, yeah, is dying. I heard that. I don't know that that's so, but I heard that. So, you know, those are two people who were just